Want to dance with beautiful women anywhere, anytime? Well, let me tell you how. It's a lot simpler than you would think. So, let me start off with an example that happened to me about 4 months ago. I went to Victoria for a Valentine's dance that was at one of the local cultural centers. Now, it was advertised on Facebook as a community dance, or at least I thought it was. So I assumed that meant the entire community of Victoria. So I went to it. When I got to the door of the cultural center, they were a little surprised to see me, especially considering I didn't speak the language. And they questioned, you want to buy a ticket? And I said, well, this is a dance, isn't it? She said, yes. I said, well, do you allow single men in? And she said, yes. I said, well, then, yes, I'd like to buy a ticket. And so she smiled and sold me a ticket. And I asked her if there was a coat check. And she pointed me in the area and she said, you'll see a door over there for a coat room, so you can just go hang your jacket up in there. I said, okay, thank you. And so as I walked into the main hall and I was walking over to the coat room, I noticed nobody was dancing. Music was pumping. It had been on for over an hour. So I was slightly after 10 o'clock and the dance advertised starting time of 9 o'clock. And still there was nobody on the dance floor. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, what am I going to do? All the men were standing on one side of the hall. All the women were standing on the other side of the hall. A lot of them had their drink in hand. And they were all just chatting. Okay, well, first of all, I don't drink. And secondly, as I said, I didn't speak the language from this cultural center that most of these people were speaking, including the MC throughout the night. I didn't understand anything they were saying. So I thought, well, I came here to dance, so I'm just going to dance. So I went and hung my jacket up. I walked straight up to the middle of the dance floor and I started dancing. Well, within a minute, there was 5 or 6 women. They surrounded me and they just started dancing around me. I was like, oh, wow, this is great. Wasn't alone for very long at all. And so I just kept dancing and doing my thing, without, making any of them uncomfortable, just basically did my own thing. And slowly more and more women came onto the dance floor. By the third song, they'd formed a ring around me and there was about 25 women and they were all dancing around me. I was still the only guy on the dance floor. That was one of the coolest things that's happened to me in a long time. I was really enjoying that moment. Anyhow, eventually the rest of everybody else came on the dance floor and, it became it was a great night. It was just, they were waiting for a spark and I fortunately was able to be that spark. And I actually did have a couple young men come up and talk to me later in the evening and mention how happy they were that I showed up because, it wasn't much fun until I got there. And so, yeah, it was a wonderful evening. And all I had to do was go there and dance. And I didn't perform for anybody. I enjoy dancing. I enjoy music. So I just did my own thing. And I was dancing with beautiful women and men all night long. I had so much fun. But there's a catch. All you're going to do is dance. That's all this is. At one point, when the MC was on the stage talking, and I didn't understand the language, I went and talked to one of the young ladies who had danced with me multiple times throughout the night. And as soon as I walked up to her, she put her hand up and said, "Stop, I have a boyfriend." I said, "Whoa." I said, "I'm not here to ask you for a date. I'm here to ask you if you could translate for me." And she kind of laughed and said, "Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely." She said, "I'm sorry." And then so she translated for me. But that's my point is, it's just to dance. So go there, dance. Try to add, don't try to take. And you will have beautiful people dancing with you all night long. I've done this multiple times over the last, 3 years since I quit drinking. That's what I do now. I go to concerts, community dances, music festivals, anywhere there's live music or dancing, even to, canned music. It doesn't matter to me because it's about the positive energy. And if you just show up with your own positive energy, then you'll be rewarded. Now, one other experience I want to share to you is something that recently happened to me when I went to New York. It was my second last day, and I'd been having a wonderful time. I'd been to rooftop dances in Manhattan. I'd been to concerts underneath Times Square at the Sony Hall. I was having so much fun. And so one Sunday morning, I woke up and I thought, well, what am I going to do today? So I went online to Eventbrite, and I was looking for anything that would interest me that day. And there was an afternoon dance from 2 o'clock till 8 o'clock in Philadelphia. And I've never been to Philadelphia, and it was only about a 2-hour drive, so I thought, that's perfect. What a wonderful way to spend my day. I get to do some driving, see some countryside I've never seen before, go to a city I've never been to before, and I get to dance some more. So when I got to Philadelphia, I used a parking app to find me a parking lot near where I was going, which it was about 2 blocks away from the venue. And as I was walking towards the venue, I could tell that it was a different type of neighborhood than I normally spend time in, I guess is the best way to say it. And there were some pretty beat up buildings and a lot of homeless people on the streets, but I mean, that's fine. They're not bothering me, I'm not bothering them. So when I got to the venue, there was a very large security at the guard standing at the front door. And he's like, what can I do for you? And I said, was there a dance here? No, I asked him at the address. I had the address. I said, is this address? Because there was no number on the building. And he's like, are you sure you're at the right place? I said, well, is this address? And he said, yes. I said, is there a dance here? He said, yeah. I said, well, and I showed him my ticket on my phone. I said, well, does this ticket get me in? He's like, yes. I said, well, then yes, I'm sure I'm at the right place. He's like, okay, go talk to her. And he pointed to a lady inside. By this time, I knew what was going on. I knew what I was walking into, but I didn't care. I have no evil intentions, so I just went in with high hopes, let's say. So I went and talked to the lady inside and kind of got the same type of questioning from her. Are you sure you're at the right place? Like, are you sure you want to be here? I'm like, yes, I bought a ticket. I want to be here. And she said, okay, go ahead. So then I went up some stairs. I went into this large room. And it was a beautiful room. Everything was oak and brass and large chandeliers. And a really large room with a beautiful bar built right in the center of it. And a temporary DJ booth set up over in the corner. But nobody dancing, once again. So I walked up to the bartender and I started talking to him. And I let him know I'm from Canada. I'm from out of the country, and I just kind of said it in passing, so he'd get the lowdown on me. And I asked him, I said, is this a dance? And he said, yeah. He said, people should start dancing anytime soon, He said, it's a dance. And I said, okay, fine. So I just went and started dancing right in front of the DJ booth. And about half hour later, still nobody. I'm up there all by myself. So I introduced myself to the DJ, and there was a professional photographer there, and I had introduced myself to him. Actually, I think he might have been the promoter. Either way, I introduced myself to him, and chatted with both of them, and they were both very friendly. And I just kind of wanted the room to know that I was there to have fun. I was a friendly guy. After about an hour, there's still nobody dancing. I'm still the only person dancing. And so I went back to the DJ. DJ Splash was his name. Really nice guy. Great guy. And I asked him, I said, am I ruining the vibe in this room? And he's like, no, brother. He says, you rolling. He says, you fine. I said, okay, good enough. Because I knew kind of that I was making some people uncomfortable in there, because you could see people pointing and staring and whatnot, but I wasn't uncomfortable. So I kept dancing. Well, I guess after about an hour and a half, they realized, damn, this dude ain't gonna leave, so if we want to dance, we might as well start dancing. And slowly they started trickling up onto the dance floor. Well, By the time I left, there was 4 young women, and they were twerking and grinding right in front of me. They were giving me a show. Like, they were definitely performing for me. The room finally warmed up to me and accepted me. It took a long time, but it did. And wow, it turned out to be absolutely amazing. Like, I've never had anything like that happen at any of these dances I've went to before. And I really enjoyed it. And then about 15 minutes before it was over, I grabbed my jacket and left, because I could still feel that there was a few people uncomfortable with me being in the room. And I thought, well, it's better to get out of here, before everybody leaves at the same time. And I did. And I drove back to New York. And I'll never forget either one of those nights, because that's what happens when you present yourself with intention. And, eventually both rooms accepted me, one a lot quicker than the other one. But at the end of the night, both nights, I had a wonderful time. And yeah, it's all about having fun. And it's all about having beautiful women come and dance with you without you even having to talk to them. Like, I don't approach anybody ever at these dances. They always approach me. Raves, EDMs, music festivals. Just start dancing and don't perform. Just do your own thing, and you will be rewarded and you will enjoy it. Anyhow, I hope this helps. Just because we're getting older doesn't mean we have to stop having fun.